speaker for today, all right?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation. I really appreciate it. I really am happy when I get invited to talk about art. That's my passion, and I would like to talk about that all the time. So it's always good for me to have an audience to be able to talk about that. Also to see what I am talking about, that was also a very special opportunity to share with you some concerns, but also optimism, a lot of possibilities, to share with you about what it means to be an artist, an art faculty, a chair of the art department within a Seventh-day Adventist institution. That I am very happy I had this opportunity. Thank you very much. And I really would like to take my opportunity to thank the family of Aker for taking me down today. I was not feeling really well today, so it was a great thing. And Stephen Aker, who is working with me in part of this presentation, the last part of the presentation I'm going to show you with the video. Now, I was challenged when I came in by Dr. Bates. He asked me, you are talking about art and spirituality, and what is spirituality? But then I say also, what is art? They are two things that we cannot define. So that's really interesting to see. I am talking about two things that they cannot be defined. So what I'm doing now, I don't have anything that I can take it and say that is the definition of art or that is the definition of spirituality, and from there I start to build my conversation with you. I am talking about two things, undefined things. But that was really interesting to see also that you were talking about the perceptions. That cannot be defined either, because my perception, they are totally different probably than your perceptions. And when I talk to my students, sometimes say perception is so unique, undefined, that even the life with a person closer to you, like I say, for example, now on my husband, 40 years together, growing up together, but can I be sure that my perception and his perceptions are the same? Can we assume that? We take it for granted very often, and we want to control the perception of the other, but we are not able to. They are also very, very different way. So talking into this kind of waving terrain about our spirituality perceptions, I am going to try to do my best. And you are going to help me as a good audience. Say, what is art? As I say, art cannot be defined. It will be the same as say, what is the definition of truth? What is the definition of love? But to try to define it, first of all, we need to consider that it's not a means of pleasure. And it's a condition of the human life. I think one of the characteristics of being human is the possibility, capability of communicate. And art becomes part of this communication in human life, in human life. It's a language, and it's a language for communication. It's not a means of pleasure, on putting things, beautiful flowers or beautiful landscape. I had the skills to be able to reproduce these things, but it's more the sense of communication. How are you using art as a language in order to communicate? It's one of the intercourse between man to man. It's the interplay between the artist and the audience. Again, the key element is communication. And in order to be able to communicate, you need to know the language. I have plenty of examples to tell my students about the use of language. I have been in the necessity or the pleasure to learn 2 different languages besides my mother language. When I was in Germany, I needed to learn German. Here I am trying to speak English. But how I can relate to art? And I make that aware to my students. It's the same thing. When you don't know a language, you cannot communicate your ideas. So, no way to share what you have inside. No way to share with others what they can enrich you with. As soon as you start to manage a vocabulary, you start this conversation, this dialogue. When you don't have enough vocabulary, people are not interested to spend time with you because you can be so bored. You cannot express your ideas, and many people think even that you don't have ideas, that you are dumb, you don't have any ideas to share. And the problem is not that you don't have ideas, it's that you are not able to communicate them because you don't have the language. And that's the same thing for an artist. You need to get the visual vocabulary in order to be able to express your ideas to the audience. So the art is the evidence of the world of the artist, how the artist perceives the world, how the artist struggle with things in life, and how you communicate them. It's more than only the business of making art, or making a picture. I don't say art, making a picture, because you need to make a living and you want to sell it. That is, for me, is no art. You need to be, as an artist that is trained artist, you need to make a living, and of course, you have the right to do it. But in my mind, that is no art. That is a merchandise. That is an object that you create in order to sell, but the art goes beyond that. The art is your soul communication to others. Art is the production of the appearance of the idea. That is bringing together all your religion, philosophy, consciousness, and expressing the deepest of humanity in the highest truth of the spirit. Is to exposing yourself through your art. It's the same thing as a writer. It's expressing the soul through the text. We are expressing our soul through the visual communication. Interesting thing is when talking about that and trying to define art in these terms, we should say that art is a record of mankind. And when we think about the future historians, and they are studying and kind of digging into the civilization of the 20th century, what they are going to find. What are the witnesses in the art they are going to find to try to define how we were living and what our thoughts were, how we relate to another, and how we dealt with social issues. The interesting thing is that a lot of work that is done today is about what people are thinking of. They are beautiful flowers, pretty houses, still lives, and things. They are pretty, they are for pleasure there, they are decoration objects. But is that truly relevant? Is that really what tells about our way of living, way of thinking, our values? especially in a world that is changing really, really fast. And only we need to put on our TV, and we are going to be confronted with all the disasters. War, animals and species in extinction, global warming, hate crimes, ethnic cleansing, biological terror, poverty. What else? And as an artist, how I am dealing with that. I am still able to go to my studio and concentrate only in painting some beautiful flowers to decorate my living room. So I am taking some words here from Picasso that say, I never considered painting an art of simply pleasure of diversion. I have wanted through my drawings and through color, since they are my weapons, to penetrate always more deeply into knowledge of the world and humanity in order that this knowledge liberate us all more each day. That's interesting. Picasso, that usually we think at Picasso and, it's a lot of decorative work in some way, so people think about it because the use of color and so on, very valued but also I think he was not very understood in many ways because he was somebody who was jumping over rules, crossing boundaries, making a revolution for us artists to become liberated of these rules and academic boxes that didn't allow us really to express ourselves in the way we do today. He was talking also about weapons. And I found this word again in the work or voice of, for example, the Mexican muralist. When we're talking about Diego Rivera, Siqueiros, Orozco, they were using the brushes as weapons to fight for the Mexican Revolution. But what's art? Art, for me, tries to make sense of the struggles, of the suffering of men and women as the consequences for the moral landscape of our age. It is an instrument of offensive and defensive war against the enemies. And art is not made in order to decorate apartments. When I am saying that, it's a sense of the struggles of life. I, for example, experienced in some of the series that I have done. When I went to Colombia in 1998, and I was able to witness the silence of fear that the people were living in because all the drugs cartel war in Medellin, Colombia, where I come from, and also the guerrilla, and it was a place where silence was taking over. Nobody was able to bear witness because you never know with whom you were talking. And this silence impressed me in a way that when I came back, I put all my energy into trying to digest that. Digest the silence in a series that I call La Suite del Silencio, the suite of silence. I was struggling with that. That was my struggle. And I am very free to say that they were my prayers. That I can say very open, I don't need to go into my knees to pray and repeat prayers. When I am in my studio dealing with these issues, they are my prayers. then is when we start to think, okay, what is the intersection of faith, art, and action, creativity and spirituality, and how art and faith together can catalyze social changes? Is a power in art? It makes some difference when I get into my studio and do that. It's very cathartic for me. I can be very tired physically after hours and days and weeks and months or struggling with my work. But I tell you, after that, I am clean inside. I am so clean inside that I recover my whole energy and I am able to keep going. And that is for me as a catharsis. But what about the audience? How the audience can relate to that? How does work with the audience? Last week I had a great experience. Stephen was working with me in a video that I'm going to share with you also at the end about my life and about how art became my tool to express myself and keep going. And I gave a copy of the CD to a very dear friend. So I visited her after a couple of days, and she said to me, she was, I don't know her expression, and she said to me, you know, I need to be honest. When I saw your video, I say, Beatriz doesn't know anything. She doesn't know anything. And she was really very in stress. She doesn't know anything. And suddenly she said to me, when I saw your video, I start to think on my life. And all my memories of my life, the terrible memories of my life came alive to me. And they don't have comparison with what your life is. You don't know what is pain. You don't know that. But at the end, and I was feeling sorry that I really, you know, the way she was feeling, but that at the end she said to me, you know, but my sister that was by me say, that is the role of the artist, to put the mirror in front of you, that you can start to look yourself into what she's doing. I think when you have this kind of reactions, you hope for changes. The purpose to integrate balance, the right and left part of the brain, that we talk too much about it, to balance the spiritual, personal, and social growth, to search for the good, and also not simply to transform ideas or revelations into matter, but make those revelations actually matter. What is matter for you? When we confront our art students at the art department at La Sierra University, and for example, I'm doing my painting classes, one of the first questions I can make to the students is, what matters to you? What is really what matters to you? What is what you are struggling with? What are you passionate about? They need to figure out, they need to find themselves, they need to learn themselves to be able to create art. If you don't have anything to say, then you cannot make any art. They need to find themselves. They need to find, okay, what are my struggles? Where I am? What is my place in this world? And be really critical about what their role is in the society and make it really matter. So we start to connect. And I took these pictures also as an illustration. It's from Christian Boltanski, one of the most important contemporary artists, a French artist that I love. His installations connect to humanity, connect to the suffering, connect to history, bring light. So I don't want to tell you more about it, but he made a lot of work about Holocaust, confronting with the death, history of humanity, collecting boxes of information, documentations. And in the sense, we can say that the arts, and I'm talking about visual arts, but in general, the arts serves spiritual, political, institutional, expressive, and also utilitarian roles in society. We find these utilitarian roles everywhere in all kinds of cultures, and of course make the life more interesting, more bright, more beautiful. And it serves also the role in that. But for me, it's very important to be aware about how you express your feelings about spirituality, politics, and be able to express yourself. One of the things that is very important and is very challenging, you need to find your identity. And I am glad you asked me, for example, about my last name. They are only little details that you start to become very aware and very conscious about the different fragments and part of your identity. And to be an artist, that is important to deal with your identity, to know yourself first. Who are you? What your ages are? What your stand in life is? What your values? What your goals? How you relate to others? And they are things that we are daily confronting our art students at La Sierra University. So we have, for example, this is a performance from Suzanne Lacey at Labovitz. Suzanne Lacey is the chair of the Public Art Department at the Otis Arts Institute. It's a performance of women dealing with violence against women. But also, for me, it was important to put it there because as a woman, I need also to be confronted with the reality, where is my place into the arts? If you look at museums and so, only a very low percentage of women art is now in the big art collections in the world. But a lot of women are doing art, and the art that women do is very powerful. With art, artists express their identity when they make art. They give clues about who they are. And the most important thing is, for me, while I was doing that during the process, to encounter myself, to have this insight, to have this dialogue with myself. But when my art gets out, I don't have control of that anymore. But I would like to start this dialogue with my audience. And I don't have control anymore about how the audience is taking them. I was very concerned once when I was in graduate school about some pieces that I made, and people were doing some kind of strong reviews that I felt a little bit uneasy with. And I remember the chair of the department there say to me, you educate, raise your children. When they get out of your home and take their own life, you don't have control on their lives anymore. And that's exactly the same thing. You trust that the education you gave them will be positive and work out positive, but you don't have control of their lives anymore. And that's the same thing with the art. You do it with your heart, you do it with your conscience, but after this art piece goes out of your hands, out of your studio, you don't have control anymore how the audience is going to receive it. But you trust that your message is going there where they need to go. We are living in a moment in the art world that the contemporary art, is issues-based. For this reason, we are talking about globalization. It's not that people ask, are you an artist? Yes. Are you a painter? What? Are you a painter? I am an artist. I can take whatever media, whatever technique, two-dimensional, three-dimensional, to do my artwork. Depends what I want to say. Depends how I feel I need to use this on this to do my artwork. Art today is not the little boxes of, are you a painter? Do you use oil or you use acrylic? Doesn't matter what I use. It's the way I put my ideas out visually for the audience. So it's about globalization also. We need to deal with all these issues that we are confronted with today. It's not regional anymore. It's not and I struggle with that, for example, when we are talking about Latin American art. When you go out and people see your last name, they try to put you in boxes and say, oh, you are a Latin American artist. And when you are a Latin American artist, they are expecting you to paint in the Mexican style, not even Latin America, that is a big continent with 22 different countries. But no, everybody think you need to paint with the same colors, the sculpt, or the symbolism of the Mexican art. They put you in this box. But no, art is beyond that. It's global. It's universal. When I present some of my series on violence, that I have a series of violence, people say, and even having written in newspapers, that it's a reaction because I grew up in Colombia. And I come from this violent country, and that's the reason I paint like that. Of course, I recognize maybe it's a big influence. I grew up with this struggle. I grew up being confronted with that. But it's not violence in Los Angeles. It's not violence in the border. It's not violence in Tijuana. It's not violence in New York, in the whole world, in Europe, everywhere. It's not a universal issue. Or do we want to put our hands in front of our face and say, oh, she deals with violence because she grew up there, but I don't need to deal with that. Violence affects everybody. Since we are born, we have its marks. And we don't need to have scars in our body or bruises in our skin in order to recognize we are all victims of violence. So we are going to, why we try to dismiss things like that? We don't want to be confronted with. Then it's easy to dismiss them. The same thing, for example, I say with spirituality, with religion, with women issues. It's not my concern. I don't deal with that. Or, for example, I have somebody who every time comes around me says, we don't need to dig in our wounds. My mother told me that if we dig in our wounds, they never heal. But I say, we need to clean our wounds in order to be healed. And that's the way I clean them, talking about it, communicating about it, making you and me aware of their existence in order to take care of that. Denouncing is so important. The problem is that when we are within a religious institution, we try to think religiously. And then we say art from a religious institution should reflect the religious aspect of that. But what is religious art? Religious art defined as art that depict biblical themes. It's also, when I think about religious art, immediately come to me the art of the Renaissance. So we always think in those ways. And the religious art was officially sanctioned by the church. It's something that it will represent the church, it will represent the religious institution. To be honest with you, when I went to Italy, I went to Florence, and I was visiting the museums, the cathedrals, admiring the skills of those artists. But to be honest with you, and you can be mad with me, after a while I was bored. Everywhere I saw the same thing. It was the same over and over and over again. Why? Because those artists, they were skillful people, very well trained. They were working for the status quo, who paid them to keep doing what that was making them stay in power. And that is what we need to see. Is that religious art? Because it's a Madonna with a child, because it's about biblical stories, that means that it's religious art? What was the purpose of that? Was the purpose really religious? So think about it and start to see that when we look at the thing, it's beautiful. It's very skillful done. It's very expressive. But if we look into that as part of the repetition because was commissioned by the church or commissioned by the status quo to reproduce and keep them in power, so the purpose really changed. But when I think about religious art today, I think in totally different terms. I think about passion, insight, powerful spiritual overtones, and inspiring contemplation of the world and existence. So I cannot be blind to my real world around me. I cannot be blind about poverty, about struggling, about hate, about racism, you name it. And for me, that this art is more religious because it's bringing me closer to God in a very unique, individual, personal relationship. I am struggling with that, and I am trying to communicate about that. The other thing I am sorry to say is when we think about religious art today in our church, or in many churches, I need to put it almost in the same level of propaganda art. It doesn't have too much difference. And in some way, we are really committed to mediocrity. We need to be sure that we can be ourselves. And then we will see how religion, art, and culture bring some conflicts, and where they arise, these conflicts between these three parts of life. What are the ways we can break out of the sanctuary, the gallery, the concert hall, to seek for beauty, truth, justice, healing on the streets, in the home, and in the work? Many people think that we artists, we are enclosed in our studios And we have all the time a brush in the hands or a pencil in our hands, and we are drawing what is around us. Even very educated people ask me, what you do there at the art department? Are you drawing? No, I am thinking. Or even in a language of art class, after confronting the students with this kind of issues, one of the students said to me, oh, I didn't know that the artists are intellectuals. We are thinking, we are communicating, we are writers, we are philosophers, but we are using a visual language. So that is a work from Bill Viola, who is very important contemporary artist dealing with video and struggling with realities, confronting a lot of social issues in his work. That is important to see, for example, in frame of this conversation, that in the age of Fox News, the world needs ways to reporting. The artist needs to denounce the condition endured by the forgotten ones in society. We have plenty of issues to report, plenty of issues to communicate. Are we ready to do it? Are we ready to be confronted with that? Or we are still expecting us to be painting beautiful flowers, beautiful landscapes? This is the work from Maya Lin, the monument for the veterans in Washington, D.C., example. And that is from Bruce Nauman, say, the true artist helps the world by revealing mystic truths. What about the arts as a prophet? The artist as a prophet. How? Artists can bear witness to injustice, delivering messages the powerful may not care to hear. And that is interesting. In many conversations come along this part that many people will think, oh, I don't know why artists can come by with anything. They don't want to get confronted with things, and they think we can get away with anything. But it's the confrontation, that the role that the artist needs to take. Witnessing in another social role of art that resonates with religious tradition. And we see, for example, the work of Leo Golub, who was talking about the interrogations during the time of the Contras in Central America. And we see today artists dealing with the same kind of issues during the Iraq war, for example. Or here also that endangered species, are they using to be on the floor? That's another word from Picasso that I want to put in front of you. Say, I never considered painting an art of simply pleasure or diversion. I had that already. I put it back there because I want to repeat how the art is a weapon that we need really to take with us and use it. I have always believed that artists who live and work with spiritual values cannot and should not remain indifferent to a conflict in which the highest values of humanity and civilization are stacked. If I have values, if I am honest with myself and with my citizens, fellows, with the world, I cannot stay quiet. I need to take a stand. I need to take my weapons to fight. My weapons is my art, so I need to take it. I use it. And that, I want to confront the art students with this. And that's what we really need to move that. I was very concerned for a couple of days ago that we have a portfolio review. And sometimes the students were so quiet and and I said, what is your passion? You have a passion? You need to move. In other words, you cannot be here. What is the reason for being here? You need to show me you are alive, you are a passion for life, and you need something to tell, something to share, something to communicate. I put this slide here only to cover a little bit about a time in the art history, the modern art, for example, when we were talking about the 40s, 30s, 40s, 1949. So about the new movement about the abstract expressionism. They were not using figures. They were dealing only with abstract art. But even though they were not dealing with figurative work, and the academy was, the art was so restricted by the critics that they didn't allow the artists really to use any figurative work. They were not accepted as artists if they were not dealing with this abstract art, even though it was a lot of spiritual issues and spiritual thoughts beyond that. Even Mark Rothko was called the theologian, because beyond that, it was a lot of spiritual insight in his work. But then, I think I am very happy that after this period passed of the abstract expressionism and the abstract art, the artists start to look the ways to break these boundaries and relate art to life again, to make life for everybody, not only for an elite that went to see the museums, this work. Probably they couldn't understand all that, but it was no relationship anymore with life. And that was a total revolution again when art became part of life and became integrated in life again in the 60s. So silence is not the solution. So we need to find how we can relate to artists, what they say, make the questions, maybe that we don't have the answer for yet, but not about silence. That is one of my work. The final piece of the Suite of Silencio, I was talking to you before, after struggling with the silence for fear, after painting 22 quilts painting, dealing with this issue, it came the moment to me when I say, breaking the silence. It's time for breaking the silence. And for me, was really empowered because I was able to break that and talk about that and start to digest and put the whole series out, being able to talk about that. And I am so happy that I had the opportunity to exhibit that in Colombia for 2 years ago. Through history, art had always placed itself at the service of the poor, the oppressed, the victims of war, the targets of racial and national hatred. And we see, for example, the work of Kate Kollwitz, one of the German expressionist painters, dealing with death, with misery of the world, poverty. Artists create images that wake us up, cause us to think, to feel, and hopefully to act. And we can see, for example, the work also of Francisco Goya, who was one of the Spanish painters of the court, working for the royalty, but when he retired to his home, he really became the painter that was pouring out of his soul what he needed to do. And he did this big series about the miseries of war. talking to that, and I was talking in the car about that, we have an incident at La Sierra University that one of our students put an installation like that, a real work of that in front of campus. And it was a big, big commotion. So that is the power of art. Maybe we can talk about that later in the answering question. I want to keep going, but Picasso's Guernica, that is also a testimony of war. And artists can speak with force and passion, saying a few strokes that we are in great need of opposing power against war, for example. See, doesn't need to be too much. People, a few strokes can tell you more than a lot of words. Art is about breaking boundaries, breaking rules, crossing over, inventing, transforming. I would like to talk more about that in the questions and so on, because that is what we want with the students, to be able and empower them to break rules, to break boundaries, to crossing over. What are art? They are painters who transform the sun into a yellow spot. But they are others who, thanks to their art and intelligence, transform a yellow spot into the sun. So, I think I will now, I put some foundations into what I understand for art, what my statement about art is, and now I am going to respond to my own this presentation with my life. Part of my life in a video that it will present some of my path in my life and how the art became a tool for me to survive, to present, to struggle, and to express. Okay. Broken in pieces, displaced from the known, family and home. Mountains, valleys, friends, paths and rules. Pieces of color looking with horror we became. Broken inside, retaining the outside. Do you know what to say? Love, fear, hate, anger, the whole day. Fear? What's the next? What do I hear? I wish I could fly far away and in pieces find my rest. Yo nací en una sociedad muy conservadora. Las clases sociales, la religión y el papel del hombre y la mujer estaban muy bien definidos. A muy temprana edad aprendí a ser una niña muy sumisa y a desempeñar mis funciones como parte de una familia muy tradicional de la región. Yo fui una niña dulce y me hacía querer con facilidad. Parecía un pajarito en una jaula de oro, rodeada de atención y mucho amor. Recuerdo que en mi casa teníamos un canario y de vez en cuando mi mamá me permitía sacarlo de la jaula, sostenerlo en mis manos mientras ella le cortaba las uñas. Pajarito, pajarito, que vuelas por el mundo entero. La religión representaba una fuerza que nos mantenía confinadas dentro de las normas sociales establecidas. Mis tías, las monjas, la música suma de 4, trataron mucho para que les siguiera su ejemplo para llegar a ser esposa de Cristo como ellas. Específicamente recuerdo una de sus visitas a mi abuelita, cuando aprovecharon la oportunidad para vestirme de monjita como ellas. Y con orgullo me paseaban por todas partes. Estaban orgullosas de su sobrina. Virgen eres y virgen te quedarás. Cuando estaba en segundo de primaria, era una de las más pequeñas del salón. Estaba siempre sentada en primera fila. La maestra tenía muy mal temperamento y siempre que pasaba delante de mí, me aruñaba muy fuerte en mi nuca. Pero yo nunca dije nada, nunca me quejé. Tenía mucho miedo. Un fin de semana me estaba tomando una ducha y mi mamá vino a ayudarme. Descubrió que tenía muchos morados en mi nuca y me preguntó qué pasaba. Yo me puse a llorar. Al fin le conté lo sucedido y ella decidió ir a hablar con la monja al colegio. Quería saber qué pasaba. Ella me dijo que tú eras un encanto, que tú eres el querubín y el serafín de la clase. Cuando regresé al colegio el próximo día, tenía la esperanza de que las cosas hubieran cambiado. Pero no fue así. Ella me seguía aruñando, me aruñaba más fuerte. Y en mi mente de niña, lo único que podía pensar, qué bueno que mi mamá fuera invisible y pudiera estar sentada en la parte de atrás de este salón para que ella pudiera ver lo que está sucediendo. Sentimientos de culpabilidad y el miedo del castigo divino eran los compañeros diarios. El desperdiciar una corta hebra de hilo en una clase de costura era suficiente para escuchar a las monjas pronunciarse con respecto al castigo agonizante del infierno que iríamos a recibir, enredadas en los pedazos de hilos que desperdiciábamos. Por supuesto que estas imágenes literales despertaron mi imaginación. Desde mi niñez fui muy curiosa y tenía una necesidad natural de expandir mi horizonte, de cuestionar e inspeccionar lo nuevo, lo que era diferente. Todo lo que me rodeaba lo tenía que explorar. Mientras jugaba, fui muy consciente de las conversaciones de los adultos a mi alrededor y a menudo me tomaba la libertad de ofrecerles mi opinión sin habérmela pedido. ¡Qué sorpresas se llevaban! Mis antenas siempre estaban conectadas. Empecé mi educación universitaria con el objetivo de llegar a ser una arquitecta, ya que un artista no contaba con el prestigio aprobado por la sociedad. No tuve un artista que me sirviera de modelo. Pronto me di cuenta que el programa estaba orientado en una forma muy tecnológica y que me restringía mucho en mi expresión. También recuerdo la terrible presión que se ejercía sobre los estudiantes del sexo femenino. Teníamos que enfrentar diariamente el acoso de los profesores, quienes mostraban su disgusto por la presencia emergente de las mujeres en las universidades. Ellos querían mantenernos sujetas al papel tradicional de la mujer. Tú no eres sino pispita de ojos, nos decían. Te matriculaste en esta carrera para buscar un marido. Después de conseguirlo, te das de baja. Por favor, no tomes el lugar de estudio de un hombre, ya que son ellos los que proveerán para la familia. Desde muy temprano aprendí que la mujer estaba alienada por el mundo del hombre y que la sumisión y abnegación eran las cualidades que se esperaban para ser una buena esposa. Años más tarde aprendí en Alemania cómo se describía a la mujer latina como la mujer de las 3 Ks: Kinder, Küche, Kirche. Pero eso no es para mí. Mamá, yo te quiero mucho, pero no quiero vivir tu experiencia. Esto me lo repetía a mí misma a menudo. Mi mundo estaba lleno de contradicciones. Decidí desafiar el estado de cosas y a mí misma. Me matriculé en el Instituto de Bellas Artes de Medellín para estudiar pintura y dibujo y también me matriculé en la Escuela de Música. Admiraba el talento de mis compañeros de clase y de los recursivos que eran. Algunos de ellos vendían helados durante el día en las calles para buscar su sustento. Recuerdo cuando canté en un coro improvisado con motivo del funeral del padre de uno de mis compañeros en un barrio marginal. Durante este tiempo, coleccioné una increíble cantidad de imágenes visuales de mis experiencias cotidianas. Estas imágenes regresan a mi mente como un río que fluye como una fuente espiritual de sanación y limpieza. Mi primer profesor de pintura era poeta y un maestro muy dedicado. Debido a un accidente automovilístico estuve confinada a mi casa por varios meses y ese profesor me llamaba todos los días para darme ánimo y me entretenía leyéndome sus poemas románticos. Recuerdo que lo vi llorar cuando su novio lo abandonó. En algunas tardes, después de empezar las clases de pintura, él se alejaba hacia una terraza adyacente para contemplar la luna y derramar sus lágrimas. Yo corría detrás de él y me escondía para verlo llorar. La experiencia como estudiante de arte fue liberadora. Mi conocimiento del mundo se expandía. Tuve la oportunidad de experimentar un mundo social desconocido para mí en ese entonces. Un mundo diverso también con respecto a las preferencias sexuales y a la diferencia de edad que había entre los compañeros y entre mis instructores. A pesar de la riqueza social que estaba vivenciando, esos cambios no fueron experimentados y la tensión creada por el temor que mi papá sentía de exponer a su hija a un mundo diferente y de la curiosidad de mi mamá que quería ver a través de mis ojos lo que para ella había sido prohibido. Durante este tiempo también conocí a alguien. Él abrió puertas para experimentar otros mundos. Claro que esto se convirtió en un mundo de tensión entre mi papá y yo, quien no podía aceptar la idea de que me casara con un extranjero, destruyendo los sueños de un padre que tenía el temor de perder a su hija. Rompí tradiciones de generaciones. Como era católica bautizada, en Colombia no se me permitía casarme fuera de la iglesia. Un abogado me aconsejó que escribiera una carta al obispo solicitando la excomunión. El obispo debía firmar el recibo de la carta y sin cuya firma no podía gestionar el matrimonio civil. Me presenté a la oficina del obispo. El clérigo que estaba en turno había sido mi profesor de religión en el colegio. Esperé un rato hasta que otro sacerdote joven que no me conocía lo reemplazó en su turno. Me acerqué a él y lo convencí de que me consiguiera la firma que necesitaba. Mi nueva religión propiciaba un ambiente que me empujaba a rechazar a mi familia y a mi cultura. Motivada por el amor de mi esposo extranjero y deseosa de conocer el mundo, empaqué mi maleta. En mi nuevo medio encontré muchas otras aulas. La gente me miraba como un souvenir. Sentía la necesidad de reconstruir mi mundo. Mi arte se llenaba de imágenes que me conectaban con mis raíces partidas. Como un emigrante, uno no puede volver a ser completo. Describían mi arte como exótico. vivía en una profunda fragmentación. Yo trataba intensamente de acomodarme al nuevo ambiente. Hasta llegué a usar una peluca rubia. Sentía la necesidad de desempacar mi equipaje de las experiencias emocionales que traía impresas desde mi niñez y juventud y que se fueron mezclando con las experiencias adquiridas en mis nuevos hogares temporales. Con la distancia entendí que Colombia me había dotado con un equipaje cargado de fantasía, un producto del mestizaje suramericano. Un catolicismo tradicional mezclado con los mitos indígenas y una dura realidad social sin adornos, en medio de un ambiente natural exuberante y tropical. Aunque estaba físicamente alejada de mi hogar, mi memoria vivía un mundo surrealista, como en un sueño o una pesadilla, llena de imágenes contradictorias, realidades humanas, mitos y humor. El arte me dota de una herramienta para apropiarme de mi mundo. El sendero de la vida me ha llevado a experimentar diferentes culturas al vivir en Colombia, Alemania, en México y en los Estados Unidos de Norteamérica. Mi obra representa la reconstrucción de ese camino recorrido y me ayuda a entender y a aceptar que todas las bendiciones e infortunios han dejado marcas muy importantes en mí y que han contribuido a formar la persona que soy. Comprendí que nadie tiene el poder de callar mi voz interior. Thank you. I will ask Stephen to comment here, because thanks to his work and the dedication and the sharing that we have, I am able to present this video today. So please, Steve. Thank you so much. Okay. So Stephen had been working with me in this video for this Artist in Residence program, and his dedication and the way we connected was incredible. I say that even the difference in age, and so that we connected so well that he was really able to communicate what I was thinking about and give this kind of interpretation from this video. So when you have some questions, so that please think on him too, and maybe he has also important insight about that. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.